All right. Hi, everyone. I think some folks are still joining. Just give them another few seconds. All right. Okay. So, well, good morning or good afternoon, depending, or maybe even good evening, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to see, well, not to really to see you all, but to welcome you here today. We're excited to have you. If you've joined us, that means that you are excited, like us, to transform healthcare, and we're here to help you in that journey. We have a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, why we are here, why we got started, what makes our program unique, and you will get to hear from our alumni this afternoon as well. So you can ask them any questions you want about their experience, and feel free to put those questions in the Q&A box. You're welcome to put them in anytime during the presentation, and we will get to them at the end. So with that, we'll get started. First, a round of introductions. My name is Paola. I'm the founding director of this program, and I have over 10 years experience in the healthcare innovation space. Joining me as part of the program and operations team is Nancy and Mari Lou. They bring lots of experience in program management and a passion for both education and social impact. We also have Zach and Raquel. Zach has been a core member of our founding team since we started, and Raquel has been our lead biodesign coach since year one. Together, they bring vast experience in startups, industry, engineering, product design and development, and in-depth knowledge of the biodesign process. Not here today, but also a big part of our team is Annie. Annie is our team development lead. And what that means is that she spends a lot of time working with our teams to make sure that they work to their best capacity. And she will also be leading fellows through their individual goals, making sure they identify what's important to them and hopefully meet those goals during the fellowship period. Now, I want to take a minute to thank all of our advisors and our mentors. A lot of them who are not pictured here today, but thanks to them, we are here today. This really has been like a startup within the Harvard ecosystem. The reason that we started was because all of us, both in the industry side and the academic side, recognized how many resources Harvard had to offer, but we also recognized that the Boston life sciences ecosystem was really rich in opportunity. And we wanted to be able to connect all of those dots and create a program that could train the future innovators. And you'll hear a little bit more about how we train innovators, the framework that we use. But for me, I think of it as like, how do we train people to ask the right questions, make sure they're solving the right problems, and how do they design smarter solutions and grow meaningful careers in healthcare? And if you're wondering, okay, what does this mean? How do we train people in healthcare? You'll get to learn today a little bit more about the biodesign process. Zach is going to talk about that later on. But really I want everyone to sort of think about the programs that we offer is not just training you how to work in healthcare, but how, again, to transform healthcare. And we teach you a proven innovation process to do that. And we've grown a really wonderful portfolio of programs that are open to our community. Today, we're here to talk about the HealthTech Fellowship, which is our 10-month full-time immersive program. We also have our Junior HealthTech Fellowship, which is a really wonderful program that we started the second year in 2021, I believe, 2022. And that's where we reach out to the community. We work with high school students who are interested in STEM careers, and we teach them the innovation process, biodesign, and we also expose them to other careers in healthcare. Anatomy of Innovation is our 10-week spring course, and that's open to Harvard students and Harvard affiliates from our hospitals. And we also train our faculty, we train them around innovation and help them move their projects forward as well. This year, we're revamping the Harvard Medical School Makerspace, which is a prototyping and community space for medical students and dental students here at the medical school. And I want to point out that we were very thoughtful in how we brought these programs together. The Health Tech Fellows are an integral part of both mentoring and teaching the Junior Health Tech Fellowship and the Anatomy of Innovation. We think it's really important to learn by doing, and this gives you an opportunity to really understand how much you've learned and to really embrace the process as you're learning it as well. So if you're wondering, okay, is this the right program for me? I want to talk a little bit about what's important to us. What is the foundation that we've built this program on? We believe in building a really strong relationship with our clinical faculty, and Raquel will talk a little bit about those relationships. We also emphasize empathy in our fellows, and we want to make sure that everyone is valuing all the perspectives that are reflected in the team. And we believe that investing in your future is the best way to transform healthcare. And yes, you'll also learn the biodesign framework. You'll work with faculty and mentor leaders from across Harvard and Boston. And you will also have the support of coaches, mentors, and your team that will both challenge you and help you to grow during your time with us. And as the slide says, by the time this journey ends, we hope that you will think like an innovator, work like a founder, and lead with purpose. In a little bit, you'll get to hear from some of our great alumni, but I wanted to take a moment to also highlight two other alumni that are not with us today, but that have been using the biodesign process way beyond their time with us. So first we have Manny. Manny was in our inaugural fellowship back in 2020. He joined us right out of residency, and he came to us because he wanted to feel more empowered on how to solve all of the inefficiencies that he witnessed during his residency time. And when he left, he said he had a renowned sense of purpose to return back to clinical practice. And today he's a palliative care physician and director of clinical informatics at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. He uses the biodesign process in his work, and he is hoping to teach his team members as well how to use the biodesign process as they think about innovative systems to improve health systems at Dana-Farber. We also have Ricky Cordova. Ricky has an engineering background, and he joined us with a strong passion for biodesign and wanting to be able to learn it even more hands-on. So when Ricky joined us, he also helped to develop the junior health tech curriculum and taught it the first year. And as you know, it's been, or as I mentioned earlier, is really one of the cornerstone programs that we have now. Right after the fellowship, Ricky co-founded a startup focused on women's health. And then he also became a frequent lecturer to our program. And then he was accepted to the HBS MS MBA program, and he received the Kaplan Life Sciences Fellowship. And as you can see on the quote here, he uses the biodesign framework to help with his consulting projects with organizations like WHO, Boston Consulting Group, and the Africa Healthcare Network. And the key takeaway here is that everyone's path is going to look different, but what you learn here with us is absolutely applicable in any type of healthcare career that you might choose to follow. Next, I want to talk about our partnerships, which is really at the heart of everything we do. The community that we build here is really important to us. As a health tech fellow, you will get to spend time in the co-working space of the Blavatnik Harvard Life Lab Longwood, which is sponsored and hosted by the Therapeutics Initiative at HMS. And this is where you will get to work alongside other startups, other faculty, fellows, and really get to open up your network. You will also get to spend 1 week at Harvard Business School doing their technology venture immersion boot camp. That is always a highlight of the program, and you can ask the alumni today about their experience. You have access to the School of Engineering Makerspace, and you are eligible to become members of the Harvard iLab and take advantage of all of their resources, their long list of mentors, advisors, use their space, go to their events, really wonderful community there. And the community, I will say, does not end at the end of the fellowship. It really does continue. As I mentioned, we have alumni that have been accepted to HBS, alumni that have continued their clinical work and research at our affiliated hospitals. We have alumni accepted into the Blavatnik Harvard Life Lab post-fellowship as a startup. And a lot of them have stayed deeply connected as course directors for Anatomy of Innovation and junior health tech program teachers and mentors as well. So next I'm going to hand it over to Raquel. I'll ask her to introduce herself first, and she's going to talk to us about our clinical partnerships as well as what the 10-month timeline looks like for us. Hi, Raquel. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone. My name is Raquel Redwood, and I am one of the lead coaches for the program. And my background, I worked as a quality engineer in industry. I also currently work as a human factors engineer within industry, working on surgical devices. And I really enjoy working with the teams each year. And we take great care in selecting a clinical partner every year. Our faculty are not only the top in the field, but they believe in the biodesign approach, and they're excited about bringing a team on of fellows into their department to work closely with them. We prioritize working with faculty that are committed to mentoring our fellows. And in the past 2 years, our clinical partners have gone on to offer continued support to our fellows. And this isn't necessarily guaranteed. This is the fellows actually showing up and really putting in the work. So for example, at Mass Pioneer, Dr. Mark Vivera has championed 4 fellows to continue post-fellowship and receive the Glick Scholars Award so they can continue their work. And then this year, Dr. Mark Richardson is continuing to support one of our fellows, Deb, who's joining us today, to continue their work with epilepsy patients. So every department and faculty we work with has said they've wanted to welcome a team of fellows again. So it's been a really great experience working with these different clinical resources that are available. We've designed a 10-month experience grounded in empathy, teamwork, and execution. The fellowship consists of boot camp, clinical immersion, needs screening, implementation, and an externship. In addition to these foundational learning arc components, the year consists of the fellows having the opportunity to support the junior health tech fellows and the anatomy of innovation courses. And throughout the year, the fellows set goals, they share decision making, they receive expert feedback. One of the things we really emphasize is feedback and being open to having critical thoughts shared and not staying so close to your idea that you're not open to different ideas. So that's something that we really emphasize, and working through those different constructive feedback, and then developing both professionally and personally to pursue their future goals. So there's a lot that's packed into the 10-month immersive innovation. There's lots of aspects. And so when you all have a chance to ask questions at the end, I think, there's a lot of things that are happening throughout the year.
I think, is there one more? Oh, no, that's it. Okay, so now this is Zach. Sorry, I got mixed up on the numbers. I thank you, Raquel. All right, Zach, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself real quick and then walking us through exactly what biodesign is and what the process looks like.
Thanks, Paula, and thanks everyone for being here. Hi, everyone. Zach Malchano. My background is in engineering. I started out in electrical engineering, biomedical engineering. I was fortunate to do a similar program to our program out at Stanford, the original Stanford biodesign program. And I've worked in the medical technology industry, medtech, and med devices for the past 20 years as a early member of a founding teams and early employee and leader at those companies, and happy to talk more about those experiences another time. But what I get to talk to you all about today is really the sort of core process that we teach here at the Health Tech program. And we are extremely grateful that Stanford's helped establish the biodesign innovation process. It's was started back in sort of the early 2000s by Paul Yock and Josh Macauer, and it was building on some of the foundational work and innovation that IDEO did, Tom Kelly, Dave Kelly, and others. And really the thought is that innovation and invention is not limited to sort of innate ability. It can be learned, you can get better at it, and you can really increase your likelihood of success if you're process oriented and sort of aware of the process that you're going through and willing to iterate. And so, we say innovation is a process, or we're learning innovation as a process, but really I put this parenthetical in, which it's a very iterative process. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Rarely is it a straight line from seeing a problem in the clinic to, knowing the solution that's going to succeed in the market. And so, what we try to encourage and coach and teach is how to view this process as iterative. And so it's divided into 3 main stages, seen here: identify, invent, and implement. And we'll talk a little bit more about the identify and invent today. But in general, one of the core tenets of the process is really to deeply understand problems through the identification phase. And so that's seeing them in person. So we do a clinical immersion, as Raquel mentioned, that we go to the operating rooms, we go to the clinics, we may even go further afield, the ambulances, or as necessary, to other environments, and really see what's happening. There's just an incredible wealth of information available in those environments, and a lot of the things that may be challenges or unmet needs are difficult for people to sort of describe otherwise in many instances. So seeing sort of where there's a challenging moment in an operation, or where there's a sort of a lot of information being exchanged, that's critical to the care of a patient. These are the things that you'll see in person during clinical immersion, and you'll very quickly develop a long list of these observations. Why do they seem so stressed? Or like, why did the room get suddenly quiet during this part of the procedure after it was being sort of, more relaxed? And so there's just so much value in seeing healthcare, the practice of medicine up close. Even as a physician, it's incredibly valuable to take yourself out of that direct care role and step back and say, why are we doing things like this? So in this identification phase, we spend time, we develop this long list of observations. These are kind of proto needs. Then we'll work on really defining these into very specific forms called need statements. Following that development of need statements and deeply understanding those problems through research, we start to screen these needs. So we start to figure out, based on several factors, what may be the most important need that has, sort of the basis for success baked in. And that's not that there's an embedded solution, but that maybe there's a market there, and maybe that there's competition, but there are also avenues to create new innovations in that marketplace. And so there's a lot of criteria that will go into the need screening. Over time, over those many months that Raquel described on the timeline, the team will narrow down into the top 5 or 10 needs, and those will be carefully validated. We sort of invest more effort as that list gets shorter and shorter, really going out and making sure that that need holds true, understanding the subtle details involved with it. And then once the team has selected the sort of short list of needs, then they can start to move into the concept generation and concept screening phase, so the invent phase. So this is a fun phase. This is where you do a lot of brainstorming, you do prototyping. You really are trying to say, hey, we know the problem we're solving, the unmet need that we're solving, but how can we solve that best? And so, unlike having a technology and looking for an application, this process is really deeply understanding the problem and then being able to leverage in technologies and solutions from a variety of fields. And so it's really solution agnostic to start, but then you do need to narrow down from all your concepts to ones that are viable, ones that may have potential for securing new intellectual property and other factors, regulatory approaches, et cetera. Finally, once you've identified the good need and you've developed strong concepts and perhaps prototyped, demonstrated that they can work on a benchtop model, then we start talking about, how do you think about building a business around this? How do you start to think about the strategy? What kind of capital is it going to take? What's the critical path in terms of taking risks out of the development of this new innovation? How much how much time, what are the sizes of the clinical trials? And so through the fellowship, you'll walk through these stages. There's an incredible amount to learn here. And as Paolo mentioned, we definitely lean on not only the coaches, but a lot of our advisors to bring their real world experience. Many of us have sort of one foot in industry, as well as our involvement on the academic side. And then just as outcomes, we've been fortunate that the fellows have done an incredible job of working through this process and really identifying incredibly important unmet medical needs and starting to develop meaningful solutions. And so we have here a listing of many of the companies that have resulted from the fellowship to date. And the teams have been extremely successful in terms of taking next steps, getting into Y Combinator and other accelerators, and leveraging a lot of the local ecosystems to help them continue to de-risk these and get them ready for subsequent development. And we're lucky several of the panelists here today can talk more about their experiences and developing a need into the implementation phase and beyond. But I won't sort of go through in too much detail the different projects that have emerged from the fellowship.
Zach, maybe you, just to go back really quick, want to talk about how for us the outcome isn't necessarily the startup, but and a lot of these, it's post fellowship where they actually form to be a company and move forward. But I think that's an important message we can share with them today.
Yeah, absolutely, Paula, and you're totally right about that. As Paula mentioned earlier, and Raquel emphasized as well, we're really here as an education and training program. So we're trying to equip you all to be leaders inside of companies, at startups. Really potentially, there's the sort of outcomes of the fellowship with regards to careers are quite broad. But we really want you all to approach, solving problems, major problems in healthcare using this framework. And we really think that equips you for the future. So absolutely, the fellowship is an educational program. While we're excited about the impact that, resulting innovations from this process can have, by no means are we sort of overly directing individuals to pursue a startup if that doesn't fit in their own needs and sort of their own sort of career plan. So we aren't an accelerator, and I think just the fact of the matter is any sort of new project, new company is quite an involved endeavor. Really, I think it's good to think about that. It takes many months beyond the fellowship, 12 to 18 months beyond the fellowship to probably be in a place where you're really ready to raise meaningful capital. And so, I think we just want to be very clear today and subsequently throughout your interest in the program that, it's not that, there's a sort of guarantee that a startup will emerge and you'll be ready to raise venture capital immediately following the fellowship. It's involved, it's a process. Certainly we have a group that can help, inform that process, but that's not the expectation of the fellowship.
Great. Thank you, Zach. So now I want to switch over to talk a little bit about the application process and what we look for in candidates. I will say that we cast a pretty wide net in terms of what we look for, but our priority is to build the strongest team that we can build among the applicants that we receive every year. And what we mean by that is having multidisciplinary skill sets, but also an understanding of what this program provides and what it will take to thrive in the program. So in terms of technical skills, we look at everything from healthcare experience or healthcare provider, engineering, computer or data science, designer, business professional, background in public health, epidemiology. Again, really a wide net, but what we do look for is that you've had some exposure to healthcare, and more importantly, you have a commitment to continue in healthcare. And that I think for us is probably the most important around the technical aspects of your background. In terms of the characteristics of who thrives here, I would say approaching this with an open mind or a learning mindset will really help you thrive. We want to see that sense of curiosity and collaboration. All the work that you do with us over the 10 months is in a team environment. So it's really important for us to understand, like, can you thrive in a team? Are you excited to share your skills with your team? Can you support each other in your shared journey? The team, the individuals that form the team might have different goals for post fellowship. And we really urge teams to, to support each other in reaching their goals during the time that they are here. And again, like this is, it's a pretty intense 10-month program, and it can feel like a little bit like a roller coaster. There are times where the process might feel really slow and it's dragging a bit, but that's done intentionally. And then things pick up really quickly and you feel like you just don't have enough time and you don't know where the time went. And so we really, again, like look for those people that have an open mindset and can be adaptable to the changes that this fellowship will bring in your sort of day-to-day life. And resilience, really, can you have the resilience to, go through this year and make the most of it with all the resources that are available to you. So here are just some key points. As I mentioned, this is a full-time 10-month intensive program. It starts in September and ends at the end of June the following year. It is, as I mentioned, it's full-time, which means you cannot have another full-time or true part-time job. This is your primary focus. You are onboarded with salary and benefits from Harvard. You will be a research associate at the Harvard Medical School, and every year we look to recruit around 4 to 6 fellows. Here are some key dates. The application is open. We've noticed some folks have already started to look at it and started to fill that out, and we really appreciate that. Our application deadline is September 22nd. We notified those who've made it to the second round of interviews, or I should say the first round of interviews, the second phase of the application process around mid-October. Our interviews are all virtual, and those will happen around late October, early November. And we let our applicants know if they've been selected by early December. And the review committee is comprised of faculty, alumni, our program staff. We make sure the people that are helping us select the teams really understand the program and what we are looking for. And the interviews are several hours. You meet with many people from our program, but it is, I believe, we tried to make it as an enjoyable process as possible for everyone. And I will say, actually, the other thing I want to make sure I say is that, please feel free as you think about applying and you look at the application, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us with questions. We're here to help you answer anything you might have, any questions you might have, even post-webinar about the application process. And right before we move over to the alumni panel, just wanted to point out a few of the outcomes that we've had in the past 5 years. We've had 24 health tech fellows participate, 5 clinical partners, over 1,700 needs identified, 5 invention disclosures, 8 accelerator acceptances, 1 Harvard iLabs President's Innovation Challenge winner. And as Raquel mentioned, this one is my favorite because it was a bit unexpected, but very welcomed, was the follow-on clinical partner sponsorship, which is, again, not guaranteed, but this has been something that's happened because our clinical partners have absolutely just loved working with our fellows and have wanted to keep them around beyond the 10 months. They have figured out ways to continue to sponsor their work, and it's been wonderful to see, and a true testament to how great the fellows' work has been in the past 5 years, and we hope to see more of that in the future. So with that, we're going to transition to our alumni panel. I'm going to have each alumni introduce themselves, and then we will get into some of our Q&A. So as I mentioned, please drop your questions in the Q&A box, and I will be moderating that portion. So to start off, Kyle, could you please introduce yourself? Maybe I think he's actually in transit. So why don't we start with Bridget and then we'll get over to Kyle when he's able to unmute.
Happy
Oh,
to, yeah.
actually, sorry,
Okay.
can you hear me, Paul?
Yes, yeah, now we can. All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Kyle.
I apologize. Yeah,
That's okay.
I'm driving back to Kentucky, which I'll explain in a second real quick. But my name's Kyle Murphy. I finished general surgery residency right before the HealthTech Fellowship. And then from there, I'm now going back to Kentucky for another year of clinical fellowship. So it actually timed up really well for me, where I was able to, you know, get out, do this fellowship, which I really wanted to do to learn the innovation side of things, but then still go back into clinical practice and kind of transition back into that side. So I'm mostly interested in medical devices. specifically mechanical type stuff, vascular access devices. And yeah, we'll talk more about the fellowship, but I'll let everybody else introduce themselves.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Bridget, why don't you go ahead next?
Of course, yeah. So everyone, great to have you here. My name is Bridget. I have a background in biomedical engineering, mostly in academic research. And these days, post-fellowship, I'll mention I was in the fellowship 2022 to 2023. Post-fellowship received a ton of support, both through mentorship and somewhat financially, through Mass Pioneer, of course, and the fellowship to pursue an idea that one of my co-fellows and I generated during our time in the HealthTech Fellowship. And I want to comment, Zach's words are so true. It takes a long time post-fellowship to bring ideas forward. And these days I am back in academic research now, working with a collaborator who I met through my startup.
Great. And Deb?
Awesome. It's so great to meet everyone. My name is Deb. I studied biomedical engineering at Hopkins, and that was really where I got kind of the first introduction to the biodesign process, and I totally fell in love with it. And so I was able to spin out my two projects through the biodesign process there, and co-founded two medical device spinouts, and I loved it. And I was thinking, okay, now let's get actual training in this because I really do want to make this my long-term career path. And so the fellowship really was the perfect place for me to do that. And I was in the most recent cohort, so super happy to talk about my experience this past year. And I'm also staying on to continue to work and spin out our fellowship project. So I'm still working with MGH Neurosurgery on an epilepsy need.
Great. Thanks, Deb. So why don't I kick us off with one of the more common questions that I get every year from applicants who are wondering, like, is this the right next step for me? And so it would be helpful if each of you could talk about where you were in your career when and why you chose to apply to the fellowship when you did. And why don't we start with Kyle, since he is driving back to Kentucky, so maybe he can explain what he's doing and why he started the fellowship when he did.
Yeah. So I had known about the fellowship and I was very interested in it. And as a resident at my residency program, I'm sure some of you are residents as well. There's lots of programs with research years where you can do it. But for me, the research years at Kentucky, they want you to do in specific research categories at Kentucky. And I knew, the HealthTech Fellowship is what I wanted to do. So I kind of waited until after residency. But for me, the biggest thing, knowing this is what I wanted to get into, just really understanding the process and being able to dive in deep where you have a year where it's your full-time job and your sole focus is on that. It's really tough in clinical practice to learn what you want to on the innovation side because, you're always reading about a case for the next day or looking up your patients, and that part can be difficult. The other thing is too, just connections and meeting good people who know the things you want to know, but also people you can trust. And I was definitely able to get both those things out of the fellowship. So it worked out really well for me time-wise. I kind of had to get lucky with certain things falling into place, but overall, I'm very happy with how it turned out. So.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. How about you, Bridget?
Yeah, when I applied to the fellowship, it was shortly after, or I guess when I entered the fellowship, it was shortly after finishing my master's in biomedical engineering. So I had stayed on mostly doing research through undergrad and my graduate degree. And I had done a little bit of time in industry through internships, seeing the practical application of my engineering knowledge, building medical devices and designing new ones. And I just felt like that there was something missing from that career path for me. And I felt a little bit distant from, the reason why we're making design changes. And I didn't feel like I was well equipped to start generating new solutions because I didn't know about problems. I had never interacted really with clinicians and let alone patients. And I think in my mind, when I was completing my master's, I thought, and still very much believe that the fellowship was super helpful in rounding out my perspective so that I could generate things as an engineer that I maybe never would have considered now that I have this framework. It's been really interesting actually doing research again post fellowship, because I see that I'm making different decisions than I would have beforehand using the biodesign process. I'm asking myself things like, what is the clinical impact of pursuing this interest, and or is this a meaningful result to report? Will the right audience see it and be able to make a determination? Things like this. So in other words, I was somewhat undifferentiated, I think, when I was starting the fellowship, and now I've been able to hone so much more on my interests and make sure the work I'm doing is meaningful.
Great. Thanks, Bridget. And Deb, I know you had some experience yourself, working in a startup environment. So curious to hear why you made the transition to the fellowship from that.
Definitely. So, the startup that I was at, we were able to reach a point where we grew and hired a team. We raised our Series A. I led the team through a few preclinical studies. And so we were really right at the point where we were preparing to transition more for our FDA submission and commercialization. And I realized at that time where I really loved the unmet need, and I really wanted to more so broaden myself. And I definitely still love technical teams, but I was looking to think more longer term with my career. How can I position myself to solve an unmet need with kind of whatever the best solution is? So maybe it is a device, which is where all of my experience had been, but maybe it's a new therapeutic, maybe it's a system solution. And so I was looking for that next training where I could really become a little bit more agnostic and honestly not get pigeonholed and like, Dev's like the medtech person, because for me, it's really just like the unmet need. So I was at the time also considering graduate school. So happy to also, share if people are thinking about that. This was definitely the right decision, and really was the perfect training for what I'm, planning to do.
Great. Thank you. And then switching over to what the 10 months looked like for all of you, can you talk a little bit about what some of the program highlights were for you? And Bridget, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. Yeah. I've been thinking about this, like, reflecting on my time in the Health Tech Fellowship. There are just so many things I could talk about here. But I think, I kind of mentioned earlier, sort of being an inexperienced engineer. And I think the clinical immersion component was something that was super helpful, simply because, I knew how to design and make things, but to that theme of why are we doing this? What is the motivation? Who is on the other end of this, treatment that I'm working on? Actually seeing how the workflow was in the operating room or with patients. My year, we were working with Mass Pioneer, and they were super welcoming. And so I got to see all kinds of different elements of the care pathway that I'd never even considered. That's something that just wouldn't have been on my radar for, innovation without that experience. So I think the clinical immersion is definitely a highlight. And I'd also, if I can for a moment, like to call out technology venture immersion with the business school. I think that experience really challenged me to consider what my limits are, and, am I kind of artificially limiting some of my ideas, some of what I am capable of researching and whatnot. That was super helpful. And lastly, if I can fit a third one in, really enjoyed, there's so much you can learn about yourself through teaching. And I felt like the programs that HMS HealthTech puts on, like Junior Fellows and like Anatomy of Innovation, are really awesome. You get to work with people who are applying biodesign for the first time, and you can witness what they're capable of, which I think is really helpful for reinforcing that in your own journey.
Thanks, Bridget. And Kyle, I know while you were here, you did a great job. I think you hit up almost every med tech conference that was available.
Yeah.
But can you speak a little bit to what some of the highlights were for you? I kind of just fed you that answer, but just would love to hear from you and your perspective of what you enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize if my service is a little choppy here, but I think it's doing okay right now. But yeah, I mean, just the broader Harvard and Boston ecosystem was fantastic. And if you're interested in biotech, Boston's like the center of the biotech universe. So there's plenty of that. For me, more in medtech, there's still a ton of medtech conferences. And then there's also different groups. There's the medical device group of Boston. There's Mass Medic, and they put on a lot of events as well, which are great to go to network and learn things. But within Harvard specifically, There's a lot through the business school as well. The medical school does things, but the innovation lab for me was fantastic. They have, you know, multiple lectures, whether it's just basic startup stuff that's not specific to medtech, or they have many that are specific to medtech. I thought that was an incredible learning opportunity. And the iLab something you guys will all have access to. I strongly encourage anybody who does the program to sign up for that as soon as you get here. And then the other thing too beyond is
Oh, I think we lost Kyle for a
going to do
second.
for the last. Oh, can you hear me now, Paula?
Yeah, now we're good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The other thing, other than just the incredible eco was basically to choose whatever you want to do. And for me, I went with Sante, their venture capital firm, and I was really able to kind of learn a lot of the things that I considered my weaknesses in the innovation space, which is a lot of the business side of things that I had very little understanding of. So it was great to see that side of things. And even though I don't necessarily want to go into VC, I wanted to see, you know, how they evaluate companies, what they're looking for. And then they also have all these other connections that you can make well, which just expands your web of people you know in whichever space it is, for me, medtech. But yeah, all that together was just a great opportunity. It really helped me get what I wanted to out of the fellowship.
That's great. Thank you. And for those of you who maybe didn't catch that, we didn't really cover it too much in the presentation, but in the last month of the fellowship in June, you are able to do an externship. So that is basically an internship that is supported by the program. So you get to work with another startup or with a venture capital group. We've had people at IDEO, and you get to experience something that you haven't been able to experience before in your career. And so Kyle did his externship at Sante Ventures, which has been a great partner to us. And so he was exposed to the venture capital ecosystem there. And so with that, Deb, can you both talk about some highlights and your externship experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think broadly, really the highlight of the program for me was this kind of being able to both really launch into the next phase of my career and really grow and think about having an opportunity really to invest in myself. So I think what's really unique about this program is that it gives you the time and the space to really think about what are your values, like what are you thinking about, and how do you want that to reflect in the work that you're doing. And so for me, like I think that one of the best things was I relocated, like I was in Baltimore before. And so this fellowship is just the perfect way to really get integrated into the Boston ecosystem. And is probably one of the best ways, if not the best way, to really launch your career. Like I do plan on staying in Boston. So I think that this is just such a unique way to really get that nice introduction into the space. And then it really is this like unique flexibility to grow. I love, being a people manager. And so that's what I've been doing before at my startups, but really allowing myself to have this year to really just focus on what projects interest me and specifically the idea that I then wanted to continue to pursue after the fellowship. Yeah, it's just like really amazing. And then learning from that multidisciplinary team that we're on together. And then for the externship, I had mentioned before that one of my goals going into this fellowship was that I really wanted to be able to position myself to lead startups, whether it is like developing a medical device or a new therapeutic or system solution. And so I got the training through the fellowship. Prior to the fellowship, only was in the medtech space, got the training through the fellowship, and then I was able to actually put that to the test with my externship. So I secured an externship at a therapeutic spin out. They're like right about to spin out from Hopkins. And so it actually was pretty special being able to go back and really apply everything that I had learned. And so I helped them build a commercialization strategy and really see how all the skills the fellowship has taught me applied to a new drug innovation.
Great, thank you, Deb. So I see a few questions coming in around how do we match fellows with clinical problems and clinical partners, as well as do you ideate with the team or do you come in with an existing idea? Can you bring in an existing technology? Zach, do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paula. So that's a really important topic actually to cover to us. We want the fellows group to come together, show up and ready to really participate on the team that they are on. And I'm gonna let that sink in for a moment because I don't think I can say it clearly enough. This is not about bringing your own idea or need into the fellowship. That is not showing up ready to participate on the team. That is showing up, kind of trying to get other people to work on your idea. I'm gonna just say it point blank because it needs to be said. So, we are talking about going through an immersive process, an intensive process to identify and really select some of the best needs possible from real clinical environments. And if you are trying to carry forward a previously identified idea, it may be a meaningful need, don't get me wrong, but it's not showing up with that authenticity and intent to participate and learn the process truly. And so it's really, really important for you all to understand that. If you need further clarification, we're happy to revisit this subject, but that's not what this fellowship is about. And so hopefully we kind of stuck a pin in that one and made it clear, but really, what we hope to equip you with is the skills and the experiences that let you take maybe that previously identified idea or need and make sure it's really addressing an adequate problem and the solution really solves it. And by the time you're finished developing it, it could be it have good product market fit and succeed. And those things are not to be underestimated. I think as a reminder, most new innovations take years to get to market and to succeed on the market. We're talking on the order of like 5 to 7 years. So it's so important to get the foundation correct, which is really making sure you understand the problem, making sure you understand the elements that would help a solution succeed in addressing that problem. So I'll pause there, and I don't want to be too stern or anything, but I think it is really important to be direct on this one because that this happens and it's present, but it's really important for us that you come ready to learn, you come ready to participate, and you really are giving it your all, because I think the outcome of that can be far greater than coming in with an idea that you've kind of you have on your own and perhaps you have some biases towards.
Right, absolutely. And, and part of the reason that we started this program and early in my healthcare innovation career, there are great innovations that come from technology first. Absolutely, I won't debate that. But I believe there's this wonderful opportunity that comes from understanding the real problem first, which is why we embrace this approach, especially here at Harvard, and why we really encourage people to come again with an open mind. And this being a training program, you are able to take huge risks over the 10 months and do a deep dive. And there's some questions around clinical immersion. We can get into that. And there's some other questions we'll get to in a second. I'll tie together. But you have this ability to go into a clinical environment for several many weeks and come out with hundreds of opportunities, right? And then you can ideate around those. And that is what's really exciting. And our partnership with our clinical faculty is not only during the clinical observation, but it's year long. And as Deb talked about, she's working with their clinical hosts that they had during their year. And so you can continue to go back and have conversations with faculty to validate the needs that you're interested in solving. You can talk to patients, you can talk to nurses, to administrators in the hospital to really understand the healthcare system. And so what is the real problem that you're solving? And then you can really build a good solution. And so that is why we sort of dig our heels in and like, hey, don't come in here with a preconceived notion that what the right idea is. Give us a chance to show you what the real issues are in a clinical setting. And then you can start, ideating from there. And we have, as I said, we have advisors from the venture capital side that absolutely love what we do, because they know that what comes out in the end of this process is a really valuable one. And you've heard the TVI boot camp mentioned a couple of times here. And what I love about that is, I have professors from HBS email me all the time and say, The students that come into our program from the HealthTech Fellowship are by far some of the best that we've seen, pitching, their ideas because they truly understand the problem. So we know it works. And so that's why we say we hope that you come in with a learning mindset and you trust the process. And in terms of the clinical, there's a question I think too of like, how do you match with the clinical partner? We focus on who is a great clinical partner for the year, meaning that they have the bandwidth and the interest to host our fellows. And we do that in collaboration with Mass General Brigham Innovation Group, as long as some other leadership in the hospital systems. We don't necessarily look at the backgrounds of people applying and the specialty area or the area that we're going to be and try to match it that way. We have seen in the past 5 years, it works best when we just find the best team we possibly can, and we find the best clinical partner that we can. And it always works. Every clinical partner we've had has wanted the fellows to come back. So that process has worked for us well. Let's see, there was a question. See if I can, let's see, there's a question about how the fellowship helps fellows navigate the tension of improving quality of clinical care delivery in context of the demands of the broader healthcare system, whether those are resources and utilization constraints implemented by health plans or the systematic challenges of addressing health equity. So how is this weaved into our fellowship? Who wants to take that one?
I can try.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Sure. Yeah. So those are fantastic questions. I think as you're understanding the stakeholders in a problem, that's where this would start to come in. So it's not just about, what do you see in the clinical immersion, but as you deeply understand that problem, how did these patients get here? What's preventing them from, why are some patients getting this treatment and others are not? Why are the complication rates differing, depending on the level of care you have access to? So there's these deep layers of understanding a problem. Healthcare is rarely sort of a single unified path that everyone gets treated the same on. And I think it's, it can be overwhelming in its complexity if you try to, figure out all these pieces immediately. And so, we start with that core observation and we deepen our understanding of it. And so for solutions to address those needs and succeed in the marketplace, you have to understand where some of these boundaries that you indicated are represented. So that could be pricing pressures, that could be, pre-authorization considerations, that could be, treatment guidelines. And so that ties back to some of the things that we'll get into with need statements. We didn't talk about it a lot, but a need statement really thinks quite deeply about the outcome that matters in the field. And that outcome is often tied to not only a regulatory pathway, but what would it take to get this solution adequately reimbursed? So, what's the health economic value to this? What are we preventing in terms of complications? What are we preventing in terms of, changes in a long-term health condition that may have cost implications to the healthcare system? So, we would expect the team and the fellows to be able to develop pretty high levels of sophistication in terms of, what is that sort of economic benefit and that outcome that matters to the system that's going to align those stakeholders that this is an important change in the delivery of healthcare or the way healthcare is done that would then hopefully expand that access and allow more people to get the right care. So I think there's lots of good examples we could pull forward. We won't have time today, but I think it's an insightful question with regards to some of the more subtle but very present forces in healthcare.
Great. Thank you, Zach. I want to go back really quick to the clinical piece of it, the immersion piece, and hear both from Kyle with a clinical background as well as Bridget and Deb with an engineering background, what it was like. Even Kyle, as an MD, it was a different area that you were practicing. So what that experience like and what value you gained from looking into another area that was not your area of expertise. So Kyle, if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's actually a huge advantage to be in a space that isn't your specialty. And I kind of knew all along, ultimately, most of my innovation is going to be within the general surgical space, but being able to get outside of that, where in neurosurgery, I did not have the experience and you're kind of starting fresh, you really have to rely on the biodesign process. And doing that, you learn the process much better, and actually made me there, my inventions are all in the general surgery space. It really made me reconsider those, and the need, the value, the pricing, everything. You kind of go back and reassess your preconceived notions on things. So I think getting outside of your comfort zone is much better, because otherwise you're going to come in with a lot of ideas of what you've already thought of. Probably, on the fellowship, you probably have some ideas in your space of what you think needs fixed. But for the year, I could, say enough about how important it is to kind of get outside of your comfort zone, be able to experience that. And you also learn other things too, and see some of the challenges that, there is between communication between the people, the providers and the innovators. And that can also kind of help frame how you're going to go about innovation in the future, because there is always a bit of a disconnect between you doing the process and the surgeon who's doing something that you can't really do because you're not a neurosurgeon, and understanding those challenges of how those problems are communicated. If that kind of makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm delivering
Yeah,
that message very well, but yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Deb, why don't you go ahead and share your experience?
Yeah, so I loved the clinical immersion part. That I definitely cannot stress enough. It is such a unique opportunity, and something that even existing like medical device companies, they aren't even able to have the same access that we do. So we are given MGH badges. We're able, just completely unsupervised, to go into any OR that we want to and observe any surgery, pre-op, post-op, clinic appointment. And that access, I think this part of the fellowship really exemplifies how this is such a self-directed program where you really get out of it what you put in. And so you're able to see, if you like, we went to morning rounds at like 5:30 because, why not? And that is like a really important part of understanding how you create a innovation that actually is going to be adopted successfully, because this is so different from innovation in any other field, right? If you're creating an innovation in the healthcare field, it needs to work within our existing healthcare system. And so it's just completely eye-opening. It really is the heart of why there even is this formal biodesign process for guiding new innovations in this field versus, making an app for something that isn't healthcare related, right? Because like we all know the lived experiences of like going to the grocery store, but we don't know the lived experiences of the exact care pathway, of a patient who is getting epilepsy surgery, and all the different steps and all the different care providers and stakeholders. So yeah, I cannot stress enough. It's 2.5 months. Up front, but then it's spread throughout the year. And it really is the foundation of that, yeah, open mind, curiosity, what exactly is going to be that challenge that you're going to really pick apart, work together, and say, yes, this is, if we're able to solve it, this really could just completely change how we help patients.
Great, thank you. And Bridget?
I'll be super quick, but I think a lot of what Deb said really resonates with me. And I want to comment here. Something we talk about in the fellowship, in that portion of clinical immersion, is there is a lot of value in a beginner's mindset. And so, it's not a crime to go in and not know everything that's happening, because you might see something and start asking, well, why is this step done? When did you start doing this? And, those are really small details. It's always helpful to have an idea of basic anatomy and things like that when you go into these settings. But I think not having these assumptions in place allows you to be more inquisitive sometimes. And I think that was something that was, especially given what Deb's comment, about my experience at Mass Pioneer was the same. We were very much welcomed into the OR. We were welcome to talk to surgeons, and they loved to, these are teaching hospitals that, we had partnered with, so they love to teach. Especially when they feel like they can impart a lot of knowledge. And when you don't know everything about a procedure, It allows you to learn from not just watching, but also hearing, and also sometimes seeing the trainees as they're learning. And those were all different perspectives and very valuable also in my clinical immersion experience.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. And I know we're at time. There were a couple of questions we didn't get to. There's one around intellectual property that can be a whole, I think, webinar on its own. What I will say is that the medical school and the hospitals involved in the program are very motivated to help support our fellows and see companies come out of this. So don't let that be a reason sort of to hesitate joining the program. You know, a lot of the IP happens post-program. Again, in 10 months, there's not a lot of time for you to actually, you know, develop a fully thought out prototype. And we're happy to have that conversation with anyone who has more questions or wants a more in-depth answer. Please reach out to us and we're happy to chat with you. Our agreement is very similar to a lot of programs like ours. And Harvard OTD and the hospitals post all their information around their IP on their website, so you can read more about them. And then again, reach out to us for specifics. And in terms of do we help incubate ideas or concepts after the fellowship? Our extensive network certainly does, and we do whatever we can to support that. And again, we can talk about that more in depth. But yes, as we said earlier, although we are a training program, and we recognize we are only 10 months long, we would love to see startups come out of this. We want to support every kind of career path that our fellows want to take. And we do what we can through our network to help support you. And you are, depending on who's on your team, could be eligible for awards and grants from the hospitals or the school, again, depending on who is on your team and what affiliations they have. And we can talk more about that offline. But thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. We look forward to getting to know most of you during the application process, and have a great day.